think we're live. Breathe. We're going to inspirate and suspirate today because I have time. So I wanted to talk about time a little bit. And I have marjoram because we know that lowers the blood pressure. The scent of it lowers the blood. You know, and I just got this at Whole Foods. They're pretty good. They didn't have a lot of other Shakespeare. Here we go, some marjoram. Crush and sniff. Oh, it smells very flowery, which is funny for an herb. But anyway, and the rosemary is right over there. I will smell that afterwards. I will crush and sniff that afterwards. And today we're going to be talking about apples and oranges. It's apples and oranges. That is not a Shakespeare quote, but it is this thing that we say about two things that are totally different, but they're not totally different because they're under the same umbrella as fruit. So I got these at the farmer's market, and look at how beautiful. Look at how beautiful that skin is. It's just, one is a pink lady and one is a gala, right? And that one's more dotted, spotted. And then we got oranges. The thing is, she's going to be talking about the rinds, but so I got a navel orange. And why are they called navel oranges? Because they look like a little belly button. And just a quick word about the quinces that we talked about a couple weeks ago. I got these at the farmer's market in New York. This is probably a quince, although even this feels a little soft. And this, when you boil a quince, first of all, it's really, really hard to cut. And second of all, and I didn't think I could do it with my hand, and I did do it. And so that was the first clue that we weren't dealing with an actual proper quince. And then we boiled them, and they should turn bright pink, which is such the sort of magic of the quince, is that it has these outer skin colors like pears, and then inside is white flesh. But then when you boil it, it turns this beautiful bright pink and makes bright pink jelly. And didn't turn bright pink. So like, okay, so maybe I can get Jane to take a look at this episode and tell us what this might be. Here's another one that's not quite so grotty looking, but you know, do American quince not have the properties of British quince? No, I've gotten them before, and they've been hard to cut, and then they turn pink. So what's the deal? These have been marketed as fake quinces. So the one thing I also wanted to talk about as far as time was, I was reading this really interesting article by this woman called Amy Krauss Rosenthal about being busy and how busy we all are as an excuse. And for us in the pandemic, time has slowed down. And it's been, of course, very difficult for people who had to work at home and their kids at home homeschooling and the juggle. But we have all been in this extraordinary situation together, even though apples and oranges are specifics of the situation are different. We've all been experiencing this really odd experiment with time. Everything's slowing down. And I know that we have done the line of the week is there's nothing either good or bad, but thinking makes it so. But the other thing is I was thinking about, so this other article said, what have you learned this pandemic? As people go, oh, 2020 is such a horrible year. I think, I was also reading about this monolith that appeared in Utah, I think, and then disappeared. They don't know, huge metal monolith. And yeah, it's 2020. Anything could happen, and it's not over yet. So there is nothing either good or bad, but thinking makes it so. That's a repeat line, but get it in there. And the other thing is the Horatio line is, there are more things in heaven and earth. Horatio, this is Shakespearean's get. The line that people say skips Horatio because he's talking to Horatio, his best friend, who's kind of like his Samwise Gamgee, you know, and aren't we all looking for our Horatio or our Samwise Gamgee on our hero's journey through this piece of time. This piece of time in life. And there are more things in heaven and earth, Horatio, than are dreamt of in our philosophy. And this has been an adventure, this has just been an adventure. And the adventure continues. Sometimes the adventure speeds up and it's more focused and you go, and sometimes you take more things for granted. One of the things I've learned is, not to take little things like an herb growing in the front yard for granted, and smelling it, crushing it and smelling it, and knowing that I have the power to instantly feel better. And I hope that I convey that to you, that you have the power to instantly feel better for a moment. And we all live moment by moment, and so Shakespeare says, and our little life is rounded by a sleep. So how are you going to interpret your own adventure? Oh, and the other thing I learned is this Howard Thurman quote from the same writer about, what does the world need? It's not for you to ask what the world needs, but what makes you come alive? Because the world needs people who have come alive, to be at your most alive, your most individual, your most unique, your most fully yourself, healthy, sharp, clear. Shakespeare obviously makes me come alive. I've learned so much from the herbs and how they make us come alive. And I think that's a good thing to think about for this coming week. And now we're going to bring Hannah on. Good morning. Good afternoon, Hannah. Hannah's in Lincolnshire. And how's the weather in Lincolnshire?
I don't know. It's dark.
It's dark. Right. It gets dark very early. It's such a bright, beautiful day in Washington, D.C. today. Yesterday, I thought it was one of the most beautiful days I'd ever seen. It was extraordinary. Anyway, so should we start with oranges, since I did ask you first about oranges, and here's my little navel.
Yeah. Well, I mean, oranges and lemons, actually, both really, because we can use, obviously we can use oranges as an incredibly good source of vitamin C. So, whether you're using oranges or whether you're using lemons at the onset of a cold or a fever, or just when you feel like you're coming down with something. And so if you have a little squeeze of fresh citrus in your tea, that can just act as a little bit of extra vitamin C. So that's always a really nice, helpful thing to have around the kitchen. But what you were saying about the peel, the peel is a really interesting one, actually. It's something I would recommend if anyone's going to spend like a half an hour or so on Google Scholar looking up the latest fantastic research about things. Have a look at citrus peel. I won't give the game away here, but it's well worth having a look at, because there's some really quite interesting research about it. But in terms of
peel, okay. Can we give them a distillation, because not everybody has time or the wherewithal to read Google Scholar?
But essentially, there's some interesting research about it, and the action that it can have on certain types of cancer cells, which is quite complicated, but it's quite interesting research. But from a home point of view, if you buy organic unwaxed citrus,
yeah,
when you've enjoyed that really nice bit of citrus that you've got there. Yeah, perfect example.
Unwaxed, you mean that they wax them before they put them in the grocery stores to make them look nice? Is that why?
Shiny. And also it does help to preserve them as well. Mm-hmm. So if you see organic citrus, you'll see that it's generally unwaxed. Mm-hmm. And then once you've peeled your citrus, if you keep that citrus peel and then lay it out on some greaseproof paper or some kitchen paper to dry, and then when it's dry, chop it into little pieces and pop it into a jar, and you can use that in infusions to help to, because there's still going to be an element of sourness in it, just to help to stimulate the liver and help the digestion in the liver. And it really does taste incredibly nice.
Well, that's great. We did talk a little bit about liver before. The other thing that I was told is if you're going to juice, and that's a lot of fructose in your body, if you're going to have orange juice. And that whole idea came in America in the 1920s from the Citrus Organization to push their business that you should have a glass of orange juice, but, not a lot. And to put a little salt in it, Celtic salt or Himalayan salt, and that stimulates the thyroid. So that was interesting. And you see a lot of recipes that ask for lemon zest or orange zest, cranberry sauce, which some people just made for our Thanksgiving. And I guess that's for the bitter flavor, as well as maybe some texture. And what was the other thing about oranges? Rind. Oh, I think they used in the Victorian era make candied orange rind. That was a little confection. So, you're getting, like Hannah talked before about sugar being a preservative. So you're getting health benefits, and you're also not getting health benefits. So it's a bit of a double-edged rhyme there. But
the flowers are really good as well, though.
What is?
The flowers of orange, or the flowers of bitter orange.
Yeah.
Because they're sort of naturally aromatic and they are still bitter, but they're like a sweet bitter. Mm-hmm. And particularly in Chinese herbal medicine, but also in Western herbal medicine too, they're used for that sort of aromatic, sort of uplifting quality that they have, and they're quite a sort of reassuring and lifting kind of energy raising action. But then they also, again, because they're slightly bitter, the extracts that are made from the flowers still have that nice action on the digestion and on the liver as well. So you're kind of getting a nice double whammy there of helping your digestion whilst also helping to lift the spirits as well.
Well, the smell is wonderful, and people often put them in wedding bouquets, orange blossom. But how do you just boil down the flower? How does that work?
It's quite difficult because the blossoms are so delicate. It's something you would probably need to buy in you can buy orange flower water, and you would be able to use that.
Okay. Well, and just quickly with Shakespeare, there's 3 quotes about orange. One is orange wife, and that used to be a derogatory term. I mean, maybe it still is, about the women who sold oranges a lot of times outside theaters, and people used them. They didn't throw tomatoes. They threw oranges at the stage if you were a bad actor, or they didn't like the play. But people ate these oranges, and it was a great way to get the vitamin C back then. Of course, there's no tablets. And but I also think that it's a funny term because the women were the orange vendors, and it's like an orange wife is somebody who's married to her work. Anyway, that's another interpretation. And the other one is Beatrice is making fun of Benedict, and she says civil as an orange. Civil as an orange. And it's a pun because famous Seville in Spain, Seville oranges came from Spain. So she's making a joke there. But you only get it if you know about Seville oranges. So, Hannah, can you talk about lemons while I run to get a lemon, which is great. I can see it from here.
So lemons are kind of much the same. I mean, lemons are obviously more sour. So with lemons, you've got your sour, astringing, kind of tightening action that they'll have on the body. And historically, in sort of fairly recent past, I mean, lemons were used to as part of remedies to help rheumatism, really. So having the juice of a lemon, and I think that's something that's kind of come through with this kind of modern kind of fashion of having apple cider vinegar and lemon. Just to kind of help. Obviously, it helps the digestion, but there's an element of helping the joints there as well.
Well, rheumatism is arthritis, right? Is that the same? Yeah. But a rheum is something that you get when you have a cold. So I wonder why it's called rheumatism. I have to look into that.
No, I don't.
anyway, okay, here's 2 little lemons. I did not have, these are organic, so they're small. A lot of times the things that grow really huge have been helped along by chemicals. But the quote for a lemon in Shakespeare is hilarious to me. It is a lemon. That's it. That can be your line of the week. And it's in Love's Labor's Lost. And I had to put it with the second line so people just see, even Shakespeare had an off day. A lemon. But the next line is stuck with cloves. And we should have a clove show, actually. But a lemon stuck with cloves is a pomander. And people gave those as, they put them in their closets, they put them in their drawers, they put them in kitchens and rooms to smell good. If you take a lemon or an orange, my mom taught us to do it with orange and a knitting needle and poke little holes in there and stick the cloves in, and they dry that way, and it smells fantastic. So, and we'll just do a quick little something on the apple, because I had this, first of all, apples are in season, and again, like the wax that Hannah was talking about, the oranges, they do that with apples as well, and you don't know what kind of, chemicals or pesticides or anything that they have put on these things. So if you can eat things in season, eat them fresh. Go to a farmer's market or a farm stand or a local orchard if there is one, when things are in. But I found this too, and it reminded me of the sonnet, 93, how like Eve's apple doth thy beauty grow. How like Eve's apple doth thy beauty grow. And you can have this wine instead if you want to eat an apple, or you have to come to my house to have it. But anyway, apples. I mean, apple a day keeps the doctor away. Why?
I hadn't prepared anything on apples actually, because my mum did apples. But apples, I mean, there's a digestive benefit there. So apples will help the digestion to process food, and it's often when people are quite poorly and when people are recuperating, just having stewed apples is something that's just really comforting. It's a gentle action on the digestion, and it helps the digestion to process other things that are kind of going through it. So medicinally, that's probably about all we use it for. It's certainly not something we would use in tea or anything else. But from a digestive stance, sort of a little bit of stewed apple, particularly when you're recuperating from being ill.
Yes. Really good stuff. Well, we accidentally stewed these fake quinces, which are some sort of apple, but I was reading up on it as well. And apples either have quercetin or CoQ10. I can't remember which one, but they're also very good for bone health and for brain health from age-related memory loss and things like that. And one of the reasons we do the line of the day is to keep the memory sharp. So I thought that was really interesting. So maybe if you eat an apple while you're learning the line of the day. So you already learned one, easy, a lemon, and civil as an orange. And there are more things in heaven and earth than are dreamt of in our philosophy. The other thing to think about is, I'd love for you to put in the comments, what have you learned this pandemic? This pandemic, like we have one every other year. What have you learned from all this? What is something that you've done differently, or more of a realization? And Hannah, if I haven't mentioned it because we always put it, but she's a medical herbalist in England, and you do remote things now, right? Remote. And then So somebody just tells you everything that's wrong with them, and then you figure out what kind of herbal tinctures they should take.
Yeah, so we spend about an hour and a half, 2 hours talking over Zoom or Skype. And at the end of that, I've usually got a pretty good idea of what's going on with someone's health. And then I dispense them some herbs.
Okay. Well, we're getting a little running start with these shows, and we will dive more into that in a future episode. See what heaven and earth has to tell you this week. See you soon.